Hi. First of all, I want to welcome you all to this discussion section. Uh, Today, we'll be discussing shortly on author's guidelines. These guidelines are to be followed by any author or any person who wants to prepare the article and plan to submit this in any sort of journal. There are various organizations that are giving guidelines. Today, we'll be discussing shortly on the guidelines given by International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. And this was recently updated on January 2025. Basically, today we will be discussing on the criteria regarding the authorship, some part of the manuscript uh, that should be considered while preparing the article or manuscript. Coming to the authorship criteria, ICMJ has given four criteria that should be followed while mentioning any contributor of the manuscript as the author. These criteria include the contributors should have substantial contributions to the conception or design of the work or acquisition, analysis, or interpretation of data for the work. He or she should be involved in drafting the work or reviewing it critically for important intellectual content. He or she should have final approval of the versions to be published, and they should have agreement to be accountable for all aspects of the work in ensuring that questions related to the accuracy or integrity of any part of the work are appropriately investigated and resolved. Any contributors should have fulfilled all above four criteria. If anyone do not fulfill all the four criteria, then they should be acknowledged only and shouldn't be mentioned as author. Sometimes there can be dispute regarding the authors and authorship, and it is the sole responsibility of contributors to determine whether any individual has fulfilled all above criteria or not. Journal editors do not determine any person as author or not. And if the contributors cannot settle the dispute of authorship, then institute where research was conducted should investigate the issue and finalize the authorship issue. Sometimes there can be change in the list of authorship after submission of article to the journal also. In that situation, an explanation is, should be provided along with a signed statement from author who is being added or removed. As mentioned earlier, contributors who meet fewer than all four criteria should be acknowledged only, and the corresponding author should collect the written permission from the acknowledged individual, and it should be submitted to the editor of the submitted journal. Activities like acquisition of funds, general supervision of the research group, or general administrative support and writing assistant, technical editing, language editing, and proofreading are not sufficient for the authorship. These contributions should be acknowledged. These days, use of AI is being increasing, and use of AI for writing assistance should be reported in acknowledgement section. If AI is used for data collection, analysis, or figure generation, then it should be mentioned in the methods section also. This AI and chatbots shouldn't be listed as authors as they are not responsible for any dispute that can arise in the future and settle this dispute. Coming to the disclosure of conflict of interest part, conflict of interest means this professional judgment concerning a primary interest such as patient's welfare or the validity of research that is influenced by a secondary interest such as financial gain. This conflict of interest may not always indicate a problematic influence on the papers contained. Perception of conflict may erode trust in science as much as conflict of interest itself, and it is the sole judgment of readers to judge the relationships and activities related to the paper's content. Financial relationships such as employment, consultancies, stock ownership or options, honoraria, patents, and paid expert testimony are the most easily identifiable conflict of interest. Other conflict of interests include personal relationships or rivalries, academic competitions, and intellectual beliefs. There can be other sort of conflict of interest as well. And one should avoid agreements with study sponsors that interfere with access to study data or the availability to analyze and interpret data. As you know, sponsors are the critical part for any sort of big research to go on. But we should take in mind that these sponsors shouldn't control the study design and study data collection, analysis part, or interpreted data that will directly or indirectly influence the result or the conclusion of the study. Not only authors, but peer reviewers, editors, and editorial board members should declare conflict of interest, if any. And those editors who are involved in the mm, articles that is submitted to the journal and they have some sort of relationships or activities that can pose conflict of interest to the article, then these editors should recuse themselves from editorial decisions and they should hand over the responsibilities to other editorial team members. Editorial staff and peer reviewer must not use information gained through working with manuscripts for private gain before its publication. If it is done, then it will be taken as breach of confidentiality of the authors. While reporting conflict of interest, authors should mention authors' relationships and activities and sources of support for the work. As mentioned earlier, if sponsor is involved, then author should explain the role of his sponsor, their role in study design, collection, analysis, and interpretation of data, writing of the report, and so on. If there is any restrictions from the sponsor side regarding the submission or the preparation of data study collection, then it should be mentioned in the conflict of interest. And also it should be mentioned that that extent, whether that access is still ongoing or not. Coming to the responsibilities in submission and peer review process, one should avoid submission in predatory or pseudo journals, and we should avoid referencing predatory journals also. Coming to editorial part, we should respect confidentiality of the authors, and we should consider timeliness and responsibility as authors. We should try to avoid or discourage use of AI during peer review process. Nowadays, paper publication is largely decreased and electronic publication is increasing day by day. It provides flexibility of publishing different versions of article. Nowadays we can see various publication houses that are publishing pre-print versions also. It is possible just because of electronic publication which provides flexibility for various versions and they can upload uh, after each review process is complete. While linking to other journal sites, journals need to declare that they are not responsible for the content of third-party sites or their availability. Advertisements are the main source of fund for many of the journals, but one should take in mind that these advertisements shouldn't dominate the main content of the journals. Coming to manuscript preparation and submission part, most of the articles should follow a given structure, that is emirate structure, which includes introduction section, method section, results, and discussion sections. Some format of articles like case reports, narrative reviews, and editorials may have less structure or unstructured format. There are various guidelines for various type of studies. Some guidelines include Consort guideline for RCTs, STROP guidelines for observational studies, PRISMA guideline for systemic reviews and meta-analysis, START guidelines for studies of diagnostic accuracy, and SAGAR guidelines for reporting sex and gender information. One can find other guidelines also, and they can undergo and review these guidelines while preparing the manuscript. Authors of review manuscripts are encouraged to describe the methods used for locating, selecting, extracting, and synthesizing data. These are the key part of the review manuscript, as this can assure the reproducibility of the manuscript in future. It is mandatory for systemic reviews and meta-analysis, but it can be taken flexibly for other narrative reviews. Coming to the title page part of the manuscript section, it includes general information of an article and its authors. It includes information on article title, author information, disclaimer, sources of support, word count, numbers of tables and figures. Article title is the distilled description of the complete article, and if the article is systemic review or randomized trial or meta-analysis, then this study design should be mentioned in the title also. Short article of less than 40 characters can be mentioned below the article title. In author information part, highest academic degree is mentioned, but it is not compulsory for the every journal. Name of the department and institution or organization along with its location is provided. Contact information including land mail and email addresses should be mentioned. And it is better to provide our ID, and the telephone number or other contact information of corresponding authors should be mentioned. In disclaimer section, authors statement that the views expressed in the submitted article are his or her own, not an official position of the institute or founder, should be mentioned. Coming to the sources of support, supports can be grants, equipments, drug, and other supports, and it should be mentioned in the sources of support section. Inappropriate attribution of funding sources and affiliations are misleading and should be avoided. One should provide the proper sources of support, how they were supported, so that there shouldn't be any confusion arise during the interpretation of data. And if there is any suspicion of involvement of such sources of support in the integrity of data, then that should be disclosed. Coming to word count, with stepping in the electronic version or electronic publication, this word count uh, is taken flexibly before. While in paper presentation, this word count were taken strictly to limit the sizes of the journal or number of papers that is occupied by the article. Nowadays, this word count can be taken a bit flexibly, but still there are many journals who limit the number of words that should be in an article. This word count includes the number of words for the paper's text, and it excludes the abstract section, acknowledgements, table, figure legends, and references. Some journals limit the word count in abstract also, and it can be defined between 150 to 250 depending on the types of articles. Some journal has limited number of tables and figures too. Sometimes lengthy articles and many number of tables and figures can be boring for the readers, so it should be taken in mind. Coming to the abstract part, it should provide the background for the study along with the study's purpose, basic procedures, like a selection of the study participants, settings, measurements, analytical methods. It includes main findings, giving the specific effect sizes and the statistical and clinical significance and principal conclusions. At the end part of the abstract, it is better to mention the important limitations of the article, and information in abstract shouldn't differ from that in the text. Many a times, while preparing abstract, we lose focus from the main text, and the information that is in the actual text differs from the information in the abstract. So it should be avoided. In introduction section, it provides a background or the context for the study, and it elaborates on the nature of the problems, existing knowledge, and its significance. In introduction section, in the later part of the introduction section, authors should mention the purpose of the study or research objective, what extra knowledge this research is going to give to the scientific society. In methodology section, we should explain how and why a study was done in a particular way. If an organization was paid or otherwise contracted to help conduct the research, like data collection and management, then it should be mentioned in detail in this section. And every research should be approved by an independent ethical review committee, that can be local, regional, or national level of review committee. Use of AI during studies should be mentioned in the method section. If AI is used for data collection, study design, or other figure generation part, we should avoid relying solely on statistical hypothesis testing by tools like p-values, as it has limitation on information about effect size and precision of estimates. And references for the design of the study and statistical methods should be to the standard works only, and this it should be properly referenced. And one should specify the statistical software packages and versions used. In result part, one should present the findings in a logical sequence in the text, tables, and figures. While presenting tables and figures, one shouldn't repeat the same information in tables and text also. Many a times, one present many data in the tables and describe the same in the text also. Rather, in the text, one can just mention the highlights of the tables or figures only, not mentioning the detail of data presented in the tables or figures. Coming to discussion part, it is begin it is begun with briefly summarizing the main findings and explore possible mechanisms or explanations for the findings. One should emphasize new and important aspects of the study, and at the later part of the discussion, author can state the limitation of the study along with the implication of the findings for future research and for clinical practice or policies. In conclusion section, one can link goals of the study, but while writing the conclusion section, one should avoid unqualified statements and conclusions not adequately supported by the data. Many a times, authors are tended to mention their personal opinion uh, in the conclusion section, which are not supported by the data, and that should be avoided. Sometimes Statements regarding economic benefits and costs of the manuscripts are also mentioned in the article, but it should be avoided unless these economic benefits and cost uh, benefit are adequately supported by the data presented in the main manuscript. In references section, references should be made to the published articles only, not to the abstract. It is better to go through the full article rather than the abstracts. And if only abstracts are accessed, then it is better not to reference them. And authors shouldn't be, these references shouldn't be used by authors, editors, or peer reviewers to promote self interest. Sometimes reviewers or other editors tend to ask the authors to cite their own articles. It should be avoided. And one should avoid citing articles from predatory journals. Papers in preprint or press should be mentioned as such in references. And one should avoid citing a personal communication unless it provides essential information not available from public sources. Referencing AI generated material as the primary source is not acceptable. To minimize bibliographic citation errors, references should be verified using either a bibliographic source such as PubMed or original source. It is better to use referencing softwares like InNote or other software like Jotero, Mendeley to minimize the bibliographic citation errors. Referencing should be numbered consecutively in the order in which they are first mentioned in the text. Coming to the tables and figures, the titles for the tables and figures should be short but self explanatory. Be sure that each table and figure is cited in the text also, and we shouldn't use non-standard abbreviations in the tables, figures, or in the manuscript as well. If such non-standard abbreviations are used, then detailed explanation should be provided. In case of tables and figures, such non-standard abbreviations should be mentioned in the footnotes. One should use international system of units while providing units for the measurements, and we should use only standard abbreviations as mentioned earlier, and one should not use abbreviations in the title of the manuscript. Lastly, authors should produce a cover letter while submitting the article, and this cover letter should include the statement about all submissions of previous reports that might be regarded as redundant publication of the same or similar work. If if this article is not published previously in any sort of forms, then that should also be mentioned. Cover letters should include a statement of financial or other relationships and activities that might lead to a conflict of interest, and there should be a statement on authorships. If there are certain issues in the article after submission also, then there should be a letter or form uh, written to the editors informing those concerns that has been raised, that these issues can be raised either by institution or other regulatory bodies regarding the conduct of research, and if any corrective actions were taken, then that should be mentioned to the editors in timely manner. This all for today's discussions. Thank you.